Um, thank Almighty Allah for bringing us together today. Alhamdulillah. We thank Him, we appreciate Him. May the peace and blessings of Almighty Allah be upon the best of souls, our leader, our teacher, our Maulana Mustafa Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Almighty Allah continue to bless everyone who stood by the Rasul. May Allah continue to bless all those who stood on the path of Al-Islam and those who would continue to stand on the path of Islam until the day of accountability. Allahumma ameen. We thank everyone. We appreciate you for coming here today, virtually though, to be in attendance for this program today. Because just like my brother just noted, you don't have a lot today, even for those of us who made the choice, because it's all about choice to attend, the program today. There are other things we could have done with our times, right? But what is most important, which is something I might also talk about before we finish the topic of discussion today, is the benefit of this kind of gatherings, this kind of sittings, coming together to listen to one or two things from Allah and His Rasul, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For the most important reason that we all know that we can relate with is the one that's one of them is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, that وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ ذِكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. That, you should remind, because reminders benefit the Muslims. It is not that we are essentially waiting to hear something entirely new. Of course, maybe one or two few things. But what is most important, brothers and sisters, is that reminder that our soul needs. It is how the soul, flourish. It is like, the way you maintain your engine, the engine of your car, you oil it so that it doesn't rust, it doesn't, stop working, or it doesn't work in a negative way. And the other reason is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa kunu ma'as sadiqin. Allah is calling all of us that has believed. So we should fear Him, we should be conscious of Him. And then He now said we should be in the company of who? The righteous people. We might Allah give us the best understanding. So not to digress much, what we are going to talk today is more like a continuation of what we discussed last week at the in-person Talim. While it is not exactly the same thing, because this is a different chapter in Riyaadu-Saliheen, it is similar. So last week we talked about, husnul khuluq, good conduct, good manners, good behavior. And what does that mean from the Sunnah? What's the hadith that the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was narrated from the Rasul? What are the ayat of the Quran that talks about that? And alhamdulillah, we're able to discuss that as much as Allah permitted. Now, today, what Imam An-Nawawi did with this chapter here is to look at some of those elements of, character, manners, and then talks about them separately. And then he calls this one Babul Hilm wal Anat wal Rifq. That, the chapter of self-control or leniency, tolerance, and gentleness. And these three concepts are quite, they're close, but there is a little bit of distinction if you look at, them. So according to the scholars, Sheikh Uthaymeen, he went a little bit further into explaining what, this means. And then he started talking about Al-Hilm, because if you look at some of the, part of the names of Allah, Al-Halim, right? Not Alim now, Halim. Al-Hilm refers to, forbearance, self-control, when someone has the ability to control themselves at the time of anger. When someone has the ability to not seek immediate instant retribution, when someone doesn't seek the need to immediately jump into conclusion or castigate someone. And then he talked about al-anat, and he described it as, meaning tolerance, which entails cautiousness and, avoiding hastiness in dealings, in making decision, making judgment. It also talks about careful examination or observation of situations. And then arif, which essentially talks about more, about gentleness. This talks about how you deal with people, even when someone is seemingly deserving of a harsh treatment, you still bring that, concept of rifq, you build that gentleness part of yourself and use that to deal with that situation. And, there is one of those ayat that easily comes to mind, which Imam Nawawi mentioned at the beginning of this chapter, just like he did at the beginning of the other chapter, is when Allah is describing the characteristics, the attributes of those who would enter paradise in Surah Al Imran, ayah 134. And the conversation started actually from ayah 133, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said by saying, "Wasari'u illa maghfirat," that rush to the forgiveness of your Lord. وَجَنَّاتُ أَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ. And then he said, this forgiveness is going to earn you paradise. And then the paradise is as expansive, is as big, as wide as the heavens and the earth. Right? He said, this is for those who are pious. And then Allah now goes ahead to describe who the al-muttaqin are. So one of those attributes, so in ayah 134, part of the description is وَالْكَاذِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. Those who repress their anger and then they do afwa for people, they pardon people. وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. Allah now ends that ayah by saying that وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. So when you talk about ihsan, doing good, these are some of the attributes of, what brings that goodness from us. Our ability to do what? To suppress anger, and then our ability to pardon people. And another thing to note here is the deliberate use of word by Allah. When Allah said, wal kadhimin al-ghayb, kadhim here, which means, to suppress or repress, because it is not easy to suppress your anger, especially in situations that somewhat requires you to get angry. A situation that is, and any other person would be like, no, this is annoying. This is, this is out of it. This is not right. But Allah said, these people, these individuals, they have the ability to suppress or repress their anger. It is also showing, Allah is also showing us, using that word, like just suppressing it, is an indication that Allah himself, acknowledges and recognizes the fact that is not, an easy thing. And that is why the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in another hadith that the tough person is not that person that is, strong in wrestling and he could wrestle somebody down and, that person can throw a slam dunk and say, yes, I'm the winner here. No. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam made us to understand that someone that is strong, that is tough, is the one who holds back himself at the time of anger. Someone when he has the ability to get angry and the situation permits him to get angry, but he controls himself. That is that kind of, strength, emotional strength. And we know, naturally, we know from, a basic understanding of human psychology, that it is the emotions that drives the physical part of human beings. It is your mind, it's your thought that drives what you do. So if anyone has the ability to suppress their emotions, then they would have the ability to suppress or control whatever comes out of their hand or their deeds. May Almighty Allah give us the best understanding. Now, we also mentioned, last week, in the midst of all of this, there are instances where we are allowed not to pardon in situations where there is someone that is habitually trying to hurt people. We would want to show the person, like, you can't continue doing this every time. No, this has to stop. No, you can't continue to take advantage of people. So in those, unique circumstances, we are allowed to take retribution so long as we are not going beyond bound. And there are many ayats of the Quran, that explains that. Because also at the end of the day, the bottom line is, whichever way, Allah made us to understand that the best thing is to do what? To forgive and to do islah. And that is why Allah said, فَمَنْ عَافَى وَأَصْلَحَ فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. That whoever forgives and then makes reconciliation, that his reward is due from Allah. فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Yet me beni yogba ajir lodo Ọlọ́run Ọba, and Ọlọ́run ma san ni ẹlẹ́san lórí. Allah is definitely going to reward that person. May Allah give us the best understanding of that part. Now, there's the second ayah that Imam An-Nawawi brought. And that is from Surah Al-A'raf, ayah 199, where Allah Azza wa Jal said, Khudil afwa wa'mur bil urf wa'arid anil jahili. And there are three, messages there for us. What Allah is saying in this ayah is that show forgiveness, number one, enjoying what is good, and turn away from the ignorant people. So if you check some translation, they will say, turn away from the foolish people. And, we would explain what that means. So like I said, there are three messages in this ayah for us, brothers and sisters. The first one is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, show forgiveness. Show forgiveness. Also, if you go back to the word Allah used it, khudil afwa, is like, offer, be deliberate about it. And what this, means, from part of the understanding of the scholars, Sheikh Uthaymeen explained that part of what this means is that it's not just showing forgiveness alone. It is that we should take what is easy from people, but we shouldn't expect perfection from people. And this is very, very germane, brothers and sisters. You see, this is one of the things I've come to learn, that when you do not expect too much from people, you do not get disappointed too much. When you give that people, you cut them some slacks. You have at the back of your mind that, people are not perfect. People would make flaws. I am not perfect myself. I'm going to make mistakes. So if someone does something, just that's what Allah is telling us there. And that's what, the way the statement came, that we want to be deliberate about the way we overlook, the way we want to lower our expectations so that we experience less disappointment from people. The second message here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that we should enjoy what is good. And this is almost, self-explanatory for us, especially as Muslims. Whatever is good is what the Sharia defines as good conduct. And it also goes to also tell us that, we shouldn't be silent when we're trying to enjoy what is good, because that's part of what the message of Islam has come to teach us. تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. We enjoy what is good and we forbid what is wrong. So in situations where something needs to be done or something is not done right, we are encouraged as Muslims to be able to enjoy what is good. The Almighty Allah give us, best understanding. It also goes to also talk about maybe someone denies you of your right. We can try as much as possible to, establish the fact that, oh, this is my right. Maybe you are mistaken. Maybe you don't understand, this is what needs to be done in this situation. The Almighty Allah give us the best understanding. Number 3, and that is one that is a little bit takoko, if my Oyiba is understandable by everyone. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that wa'arid anil jahili, that we should ignore, we should go away, turn away from the ignorant, folks. So Sheikh Uthaymeen made us to understand that what the intent here is not someone who is literally lacking in knowledge, but someone who is devoid of sense of judgment in dealings with people. Someone whose sense of judgment about things is maybe a bit wanky, like a bit, wrong, lopsided, if you will. Someone who has a poor sense of judgment, instead of you having to constantly trying to, correct the person, argue with the person, just ignore. Like, you don't want to continuously engage, because sometimes what happens is that the individual will think about, like, why does this person why doesn't he or she have my time? Maybe I need to, correct the way I approach them. Maybe the way I need to reevaluate the way I do things. May Almighty Allah give us the best understanding. So these three, advice, these three elements of this ayah contain a lot of goodness if we can adhere to them. So that is Surah Al-A'raf, Quran chapter 7, ayah 199. So those are the two ayats that Imam An-Nawawi brought in the introduction of this chapter. Now, if we go into the hadith, there is quite a number of hadith here. So I'm going to start with two of them that requires a little bit of explanation and that has a lot of benefit for us. And if we have time, I would go just mention the other narrations, especially because, for those who carry similar meanings. Now, the first hadith that I want to talk about is hadith 636. And this is an interesting one, and I believe we all know this hadith. Yes, majority, if not all. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال, and this was reported by Abu Huraira رضي الله عنه, may Allah be pleased with him. He said, بال أعربي في المسجد فقام الناس إليه ليقعوا فيه فقال النبي. He said, a Bedouin Arab, a Bedouin Arab urinated in the mosque. And then some people rushed to beat him. They wanted to smack him up, like, Subhanallah, mashallah, your long time, but it's, the way you would feel. So they wanted to rush this man. They were like charging towards him. But this was a Bedouin Arab. These are like nomads. These in Yoruba, Larubawa Oko, they literally live in the desert. So they don't really associate with people, and their character, they don't have the kind of manners the people that live in the urban areas would normally have. So their life is, they live in the desert with their camels, on the farm, and that's it. So the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam understood this. So what did the Rasul do? Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, leave him alone, and then pour a bucket of water over it. As in, they should pour a bucket of water over, the place where he urinated. فَإِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُمْ مُيَسِّرِينَ وَلَمْ تُبْعَثُوا مُعَسِّرِينَ. And the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam now said, he said, you have been sent to make things easy and not to make things difficult for people. But there is a lot of benefit in this hadith for every one of us. And I'm just going to go into a few of them. The first one is, excuse due to ignorance. Excuse due to ignorance. And there's a common balance that the scholars give to this. I'm trying to remember what they call it in Arabic. I can't remember now. And this is one of the fundamental principle, in Sharia that the scholars also like to give, if someone does something, we shouldn't be quick to condemn them. We shouldn't be quick to judge them.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yes, yes. Yeah, thank you. And I'm just trying to remember. I remember before we finish, there's a common Arabic term used for it. So if someone does something, we shouldn't be quick to judge, to conclude, to to condemn the person. So what the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did was to give this person an excuse due to ignorance. Like, no, this person doesn't know what they are doing is wrong. So allow them. Because Rasul knew this was an, a Bedouin Arab. This was, because you would easily recognize them from the way they dress and the way they talk. If you, go into the hadith, you will see a lot of, places where their behavior is just different. In fact, sometimes when you are reading a hadith and you see the way someone, maybe talked or behaved, you would also almost want to conclude before you even finish reading, like this person might likely be one of these nomad Arabs. And there also, Allah even talked about them, in the Quran, where Allah, talks about their ignorance, that they are very strong in terms of, kufru, because they are these strong-minded people. But at the same time, when they accept Islam, awesome. Now, so that is the first one. The second one is the second lesson or benefit from this hadith is preventing greater harm with lesser of two evils. So, this is one of the lessons that, and, this is part of the evidences where the Sharia, derive some of these principles, preventing a greater harm with lesser of two evils. So if there are two evils and there is no choice but to commit one of the two, we should always look at the lighter side of the two. So what happens here? The first one is that this Bedouin Arab this man is already, urinating in the masjid. That is an evil, right? The second thing is to prevent him. Now, if we present him, we are trying to do Islah, right? We are trying to do what is good. But it is also an evil that could be worse because, if you stop someone that is in the middle of urinating, that could, bring difficulty to them. It might even bring pain to some people. And then, imagine the scenario, just for a moment, imagine that scenario where they were charging towards the man, trying to ask him to stop. There's very likelihood that it's going to splash rain, everywhere where they're trying to stop and drag him. And then that means you are creating more mess in the masjid of Allah. Doing this at the same time might also lead to exposing his private parts. That's also happening where? In the masjid. So how about he has started one? So it's like evaluating which of the lesser, the bad, situation, which of them is lesser in terms of what we can tolerate or what will not lead to greater evil. So, and that's why, the scholars, agree or arrive at that principle that, if there are no two ways out of two bad situations, the lesser one is what, should be done. Now, when it comes to good deeds, if there are good deeds that, cannot be implemented together, preference should be given to the greater one. Preference should be given to the greater good, while, less preference is given to the lesser. So it's like opposite of what is done in terms of something negative. May Almighty Allah give us the best understanding. Number 3 lesson that we can derive from that hadith is the obligation of cleaning the mosque. The Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, even though he allowed him, he said immediately, like, this place had to be cleaned. And the way he did it, Allahu Akbar, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. If would you notice that the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't tell the man that you want to clean it, that you made this mess, you have to clean it up yourself. No. The Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, when he's done, pick a bucket of water, clean it up. And there's a couple of wisdoms there. Number one is that cleaning the masjid of Allah, regardless of whoever made a mess there, is a communal requirement. Is the requirement of the community. Is it falls under the fardu kifaya, what the scholars will say fardu kifaya, something that's community. But if someone goes ahead and does it, then it takes the responsibility of everyone. The second reason is that the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saw that this is someone that was still learning. Putting him on the spot, putting the blame on him, go clean it up, could expose him to ridicule. You can imagine him finishing what he did, and then he started looking for, a bucket of water, and then people start laughing at him like, hey, yeah, no, you've not done it well. Because people might also want to do that. So the Rasul didn't want to put him on the spot. He wanted it to be a communal thing that, okay, help it. Let's help come together to make, the situation better. Now, another lesson there is tolerance. And this is actually the most obvious one, but it's something that we can think about and talk about, for, many minutes, if not a couple of hours. The level of tolerance of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, mashallah, mashallah, nabi. You can imagine what will go on in your head. And another thing is the way the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam imparts knowledge through leniency, through, the kindness of the heart. And there's something very interesting, that happened because of the way the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam approached the situation, the way the Rasul treated that man, the way the Rasul, accepted his lack of knowledge and showed empathy to teach him what he didn't know. This man was so happy. So, after the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam cautioned the Bedouin, in a very compassionate and gentle manner, and then the man now said, in appreciation of the Rasul's approach, he said, "Oh Allah, shower your mercy on me and Muhammad, and do not shower your mercy on anyone else." You can consider how much at ease it felt with the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to make that kind of dua. We would know that dua is also not right, but also we give him an excuse because new to Islam and all of that. But it would have been a better thing to say, "Oh Allah, shower your mercy on the Rasul and the generality of the Muslim." But he can imagine how he was feeling like, around people, you not cannot be one, be you, and then he went out of that, and then he made that funny dua. Now, lastly, in this hadith, before we go ahead, there is a message there that my son subtle. I don't know if we catch it. If we caught it when I was reading that. The Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that فَإِنَّمَا بُئِثْتُمْ, that you have been sent. He's talking to the Muslims. What does this mean? What this means is that he is also putting that responsibility of passing the message of Islam, preaching the religion, explaining what Islam means to people on us. Those of us that are followers of Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it is our responsibility to do what? To pass the message of Islam, that we have been sent to make things easy on people and not to make things difficult on people. The way the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam directed that statement shows that every individual, every single one of us, we have that responsibility to pass the message of Islam. And that is why in another hadith, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, and I think this came in the Hajjatul Wada, the last Hajj, when the Rasul was addressing the Muslim. He said, "Let those who are present inform those who are absent." Like the responsibility of passing the message of Islam rests on every one of us. May Almighty Allah give us the best understanding. So before we move to the other hadith, some of the most important points to learn in this hadith is that we must be lenient in calling to the religion of Allah. We must be lenient in calling to what is right and forbidding what is wrong. And also in situations where we need to choose between two evils, two negative situations, we should always go for the lesser one, the lesser, evil. May Allah give us the best understanding of that. So I'm going to go to another hadith, hadith 637. which is a bit similar to the one we just finished talking about, but there is loads of benefit there for us. We'll talk about that, and then we'll see if we have time and go through, just mention some of the other hadith in this chapter. This is a short hadith, but very heavy and very solid in terms of benefit for us. وَأَنْ أَنَسِ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ and in Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this was reported, by Anas. He said, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Yassiru wa la tu'assiru wa bashiru wa la tunaffiru. Allahu Akbar. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, as reported by Anas, Yassiru, make things easy. Wala tu'assiru, do not make things difficult. Wabashiru, and give people glad tidings, cheer people up by conveying glad tidings to them. Wala tunaffiru, and do not chase people away, do not repulse people. Now, so there are four statements here. The first one is make things easy. The second one, do not make things difficult. The third one is cheer people up, and then do not repulse them. In the first statement, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that we should make things easy. Yassiru. So what it means is that, personally in our personal affairs, or when we are approaching people, when we are discussing with people, when we are dealing with people, let's start from our act of worship, because when we interact with Allah, that's the first step. The second step is when we interact with people. And when we interact with people, we also want to be sure that Allah is also going to love what we do, and we're not going to get into trouble with Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, also mentioned in Al-Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, where is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that Allah intends ease for us. Yuridullahu bikumul yusra. Allah does not intend hardship for us. So, and this is very important, brothers and sisters, because some people have this erroneous understanding that Islam, whatever you call Islam must be difficult, must be tough. Astaghfirullah, may Allah give us the best understanding. So, for instance, if there are two parts, let me just give a couple of examples. If there are two parts leading to the masjid, for instance, so one is challenging, maybe there's a lot of potholes on that road, stones or thorns, maybe if you pass that road, your tires could get, you could have a bust tire or something. And then there's another road that is easy, smooth and easy, glossy. You drive on that road, you easily get to the mosque. What Islam, recommend is you take that road that is easy. There's no point going to put yourself into that kind of difficulty. And if you have, for instance, if you have access to two sources of water, maybe in the cold season, you have warm water and then you have cold water, and you feel like, I have to use the cold water, you're trying to impress Allah or what? Islam, that's what the Rasul is saying there. For yourself, make things easy for yourself. If you have options and you want to do what is good, so long as you're not going to sin, take the easy option. The most appropriate thing to do is to take, for just like the example of the warm water and cold water, take the warm water. It's less stress-free, gives you more benefit. Just like, if you have the opportunity, if it's possible for you to perform Hajj by car or by camel, and then you now decide like, I have to travel by camel, not by car. If Allah has provided for you such that you have a car, by all means, go for it. So long as you're not doing anything that is sinful, that is better. In fact, there was our mother, Aisha radiallahu anha, she said that when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whenever the Prophet had two options, he would always choose the easier one, so long as it doesn't entail anything haram. So if the best of mankind, has that principle, then who are we to want to make things difficult for ourselves? Another example is fasting. See the way the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, explain, how we even get reward. Just to, ring that message in our head. He said, in one hadith, he said, people will not cease to attain success so far as they don't stop breaking their fasts early. So he's encouraging that we should break our fast early. And then in another hadith, he said we should delay what? The suhoor. We should hasten to break our fast, and then we should delay to eat our suhoor. Because Allah wants ease for us. The Rasul wants our lives to be easy. So what's the point? So let's say the time for suhoor ends at 5:30, for instance. And then you now wake up at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. Like, I'm going to eat my suhoor now. I want to have longer time to fast, Islam doesn't recommend that. Islam wants what? Yusra. Yasiru. We should make things easy. May Almighty Allah give us, the best understanding. There's a number of examples we could give. Some of them could sound very funny, but they are real. May Allah give us the best understanding. And then the second statement is where the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Walat tu'assiru, do not make things difficult." We shouldn't tread the path of hardship in our act of worship. We shouldn't tread the path of hardship in dealing with other people. We shouldn't recommend something that is hard to people because we want to make them to think that's what seriousness about the deen means. No. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one day he saw a man standing in the sun. And the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "What's wrong with this man?" He was asking the people. And they told the Rasul, "Oh, Messenger of Allah, he was fasting. And he had made a vow to fast while standing in the sun." The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam immediately forbade him from doing that. And the Rasul said, "Do not stand in the sun, because this brings difficulty for you. Do not make things difficult." And the Rasul made the same statement, in this hadith. La tu'assiru, do not make things difficult for yourself. Kilanfani. And that question is, does an act of ibadah has to be difficult before it is rewarded? No. It's a different thing if a particular act of ibadah is inherently, difficult because of situation. Then we have to do it and hope that Allah will give us even more reward than if we did that same act of ibadah in a much more easier situation. So we don't want to get things mixed up, right? We just want to have a proper perspective around this. And then another interesting example I can quickly give is, when people are looking for dua. Yeah. I'm so indebted. I have a lot of data. And you give them a dua of the Rasul. And they will look at you like, this dua, how many lines? Just 3-4 lines. Yeah. Because what they are looking for one gigantic dua. They are looking for someone that's going to tell them that sit down and do 1,000 or 20,000 kinikon, lofa kinikon 20,000. Stand up on the middle of the night, raise one leg up and start shouting ya kinikon, which is wrong. It is actually anti-sunnah when we look for things, a difficult way to approach situation. If you look at all the situations where the Rasul has, provided dua for situations, those duas are usually very simple, but very rich. Almighty Allah give us the best understanding. It's similar to adhkar. Someone wants to get close to Allah and believe that he can sit down and he has to do 1 million astaghfirullah. He has to do 1,100,000 la ilaha illallah. Day. Allah doesn't want difficulty for us, and the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam made us to understand. Do not make things difficult for people. Right. And, another, so the next one, let's just leave this one so that I don't go into too much examples because of time. The third statement is what the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. Wabashiru, and give glad tidings. When you talk about positivity, optimism, positive outlook about life, this is what the Rasul is talking about here, brothers and sisters. that give glad tidings, give positive vibe to people. You know, make giving glad tidings your watchword to yourself and to other people. You know, when you perform an act, you need to cheer yourself up. You need to give glad tidings to your soul. You know, when you carry out a deed, tell yourself that it will be accepted from Allah with sincerity and with taqwa, with the fear of Allah in your mind. When you make dua, have it in your mind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala qala rabbukum ud'uni astajibu lakum. Allah said, call me and I will answer you. So we want to be positive. You know, Obashiru, Rasul said, give glad tidings to people. Give glad tidings to yourself. Do not live your life with pessimism, you know, negative thoughts, negative outlook about life. May Almighty Allah give us the best understanding. You know, we should give glad tidings to ourselves in everything we do. The fact that the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you know, doesn't like pessimism and loves optimism strengthens this for us. And, you know, as a Muslim, and that's why I said for everything, Allah has already provided a solution for us in Islam. Because this single statement alone, some people will write motivational books about it, optimism, positive outlook about life. You know, when someone, a man or a woman, shows optimism, when they carry about their life in optimism, you become more energetic, right? You become happy about whatever you do. However, if someone has a negative outlook about life, someone is pessimistic, they become troubled. You know, it bears heavily down on their soul. It worries them every time. You know, someone that is not positive, or someone that is pessimistic will be bored and tired of himself. They will not even have the audacity to act, you know, they will be acting as if, you know, they are being forced to do something. So what the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is saying here is that give glad tidings to your soul, to yourself, give glad tidings to other people. You know, if someone comes to you lamenting about, you know, his situation or her situation, or maybe the person even did something wrong and they are worried, give the person glad tidings. You know, fill the person with happiness. Do not let someone come to you and they are living even in the worst situation. May Allah forgive us. Some of us, you know, we have this attitude. May Allah assist us. You have the attitude of always looking at the negative side of everything. You know, someone is talking about, can they work? Work. You know, they are talking about, you know, situation. You know, no, that's not what the Rasul is encouraging us to do. That is not what Allah is encouraging us to do. Rasul is telling us that we should have positive attitude. Like, for instance, you go and visit someone that is sick. You know, you want to give glad tidings to them. Even when they say something negative, you want to encourage them. You want to tell them, like, you know, no condition is permanent. Allah is going to reward you. Allah is going to change your situation. Try and be positive about it. And psychologists have said, you know, thank God we have a doctor on the call, that one of the things that help people to get out of sickness is positive mindset. When you hear statement like, you know, someone has a strong mind and they were able to fight cancer, it doesn't mean that, you know, part of what they said is that this person has this positive mindset and it brings the whole body together to cooperate with whatever kind of treatment, you know, they are receiving. May Almighty Allah give us the best understanding. And finally, the last statement in this hadith, the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that we should not scare people away. We shouldn't what? We shouldn't scare people away. You know, we shouldn't portray Islam as something difficult. And I'm just going to give a couple of examples here. You know, an example is when an imam is elongating the prayer more than what is stipulated by the Sunnah, or in an environment where people's understanding of the religion or acceptance of the religion is not as rich as maybe your own orientation. You want to be easy on them. One of the Sahaba, Mu'adh bin Jabal, radiallahu anhu, he used to observe Isha with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he would go back to his people and lead them in the same prayer. So one day he led the prayer and he recited a long chapter of the Quran. And then a man from the congregation just broke away and went to pray his own prayer individually. So after the Salah, people were looking at the man in a very strange way. And, some people started accusing him of hypocrisy, that, how can you leave? That kind of mindset that we usually have. So the man went to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he told the Rasul what happened. And then after he explained what happened, that, Ya Rasulullah, I was praying behind Mu'adh. He was leading us. He was reading a very lengthy surah. I just had to break up and then go and pray my own separately. So when Mu'adh came into the masjid, you know what the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said? Despite that, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew how outstanding Mu'adh bin Jabal was among the Sahaba. He said, are you a source of fitna for the people, O Mu'adh? Just to show that we shouldn't make things difficult for people. Of course, Mu'adh bin Jabal memorized a lot of Quran, right? But if you want to do that when you're doing your tahajjud, or don't do that with people that don't have the same, commitment or level of Islam as yourself. May Allah give us the best understanding. There's another situation even where another man did something similar to what Mu'adh did. So the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam had to talk about this in the minbar. Like he said, there are amongst you those who will scare people away from the religion. So any one of you who leads people in Salah should be lenient about it. These two examples is enough to explain that part of, the hadith, that do not scare people away from the deen. But also sorrow Islam, and the only thing you talk about is hellfire. It is haram. You don't, encourage people, you don't make them happy. To the point where people think Islam talks more about haram than halal. To the point where people think Islam talks more about hellfire than paradise. To the point where people think that Islam talks more about punishment than the enjoyment of the hereafter. To the point where people think Islam is more about restrictions, forgetting that, for everything that you hear haram, there's 101 halal option that Allah has provided. You might give us the best understanding. So I think this is where I'm going to stop. It's almost 3:30. There is a few other hadith. I think what I'm going to do is just to quickly just read through without having to go into details. To be quite honest, this chapter is not something that we can exhaust in a single sitting, just similar to most of the chapters in Riyaadu-Saliheen. It is just that, the method we've approached for treating this book from the get-go is that we just want to discuss those benefits. We don't have to go into all the details. We look at the chapter, we look at the title, we look at some of the hadith that will give us an overview of what is there, and we'll pray and beg that Allah will give us the best understanding of whatever message is there. So there's a number of benefits from what I've heard today. We want to call people to Islam. We should call them with simplicity, tenderness, so that they would accept what we're talking, discussing with them. We should make things easy on people. We shouldn't make things difficult for ourselves and others. We should cheer people up. We should convey glad tidings to them. We shouldn't scare people. There's a few other hadith here. I'm just going to quickly talk about there's a hadith where the Rasul talk about self-control and tolerance, that Allah loves, when you have tolerance, when you have self-control in all matters. And, when Rasul said that when self-control, when calmness is applied to anything, it adorns it. Whenever it is withdrawn from something, it is defective. And what this is telling us is that we shouldn't be hasty in anything we do. That's, I'm trying to remember that ayah where Allah talks about a human being, that it's part of the attribute of a human being to be hasty about things. But that is not what Allah is recommending for us. We want to be calm. We want to be calculative. We don't want to be very impromptu in all situations. We don't want to take decisions at the slightest prompt. We want to be, because a lot of times when we don't calm down to take decisions, when we make hasty decisions, in fact, there's another hadith where the Rasul said, Al-ajala min al-shaytan. That's hastiness, unfounded hastiness, kama konjubalabala every time. Because imagine someone hastily makes a wrong conclusion about a brother or a sister. They're going to be sinning. Someone easily gets angry without understanding the perspective of a situation. They're going to regret either what they said or what they did. May Almighty Allah forgive us. May Allah give us the best understanding. أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. So if we have questions, or comments, recommendations, we'll be happy to take that.
Hello, assalamu alaikum, sir.